Hi everyone, editing Cass here before the video gets underway. I don't know what happened to the audio clip for this particular part of the wrap-up, since I definitely had the audio clip for April wrap-up part 1, but if you're watching them back to back, that is why you're not gonna get as good of audio for this one, so I hope that's okay. Please enjoy, because I didn't want to scrap this whole footage. Hello everyone, this is Cass. Welcome back to my channel, What Cass Read. We are here today filming our April wrap-up part 2. And April, I read 17 total books in the month, and I just found myself really needing to break things up. So if you have already watched that first video, wonderful. Thank you so much. This is going to be something that I'm probably going to do from now on if I keep reading the way that I've been reading. 17 books is a lot of books to keep track of, and so I'm probably going to keep breaking up all of my wrap-ups and do some mid-month wrap-ups. So this is going to cover the books that I read from April 15th all the way till April 30th, and I read 6 books in that time frame. I ended up getting super sick in the middle of the month, and that's what contributed to not reading for like a week. And then when I picked it back up, it really changed the mood that I was in for the rest of the month. And so it was really, really interesting kind of what happened at the end of the month versus the beginning of the month. Now, the beginning of the month was a really good balance of like ebook, audiobook, physical books. The end of the month, I read 4 books on audio and 2 that were physical. I didn't even touch a single ebook. I don't know what came over me. All of these, except for 1, were 5 stars. Again, I don't really know what came over me. So I have been enjoying my year of mood reading. I just posted that video. If you haven't seen it, I'll go ahead and link that for you. But really, the mood struck at the end of April, and it struck hard for historical romance. Okay, so I read 1 fantasy, 1 memoir, which was actually a reread, and then the other 4 books were all historical romance books. So let's get to it. Okay, so we'll get started with the first book that I read after recovering from getting sick. It wasn't anything big. It was just my son brought something back from daycare and I ended up catching it. I picked up this book because I'm participating in the first Law Along by the Catch Up Book Club. Becca and the Books, this is one of her book clubs. And we are reading the First Law trilogy this year. So book number 2, this is Before They Are Hanged. We just finished our live show. That was this past Sunday as of filming this. So it should still be in the same week that I'm posting this video. But that one has already been posted. That's on Ashley from Frolic Through Fiction's channel, so I'll go ahead and link that for you. So you can definitely see some of my thoughts in that video if you were able to catch the live show. This was the only fantasy book that I read. If I wasn't participating in a live show and like a group of book club, I would have gone and finished this whole trilogy the second I finished this book. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. I loved it. I will go ahead and shout it from the rooftops. I loved this installment. I was really happy to be back with our characters, and there wasn't a single plot line that I was angry about having to go and read. My favorite plot line of this series is currently the Northmen. And so anytime we're with the Northmen and they're currently in the north trying to fight Bethod and this northern army that is making their way down toward the Empire, I really enjoyed that too. But that isn't to say that I didn't love Glocka. And he was fighting the Gurkish, kind of a parallel with his character. He was fighting the Gurkish, and the Empire is really not setting him up for success. And then we had this quest plot line with Logan Nine Fingers, with Giselle Don Luther, with Bayaz, the first mage of, I don't know what all his titles are. So I really enjoyed this. I had a lot of theories that I brought up in the live show. I don't want to get into spoiler territory because this book was definitely, okay, here's what I loved about it. There were a lot more battles Thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, while this one was much more military fantasy than the first one, I personally felt like this had more going for it, more plot-wise than book number one. Book number one, I said it was all no plot, all vibes. This had more to it because of what we set up so successfully in book number one. And I wasn't mad at it. I really wasn't mad at it. I listened to this book on audio, and when I wasn't reading it, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I smashed through this book, and like I said, I enjoyed it so much. The ending was so heartbreaking for me. If I didn't have a read-along schedule that I had to adhere to, I would have just finished this whole trilogy, and because I really want to know what happens next. It set up book number three really, really well. I am really excited for Logan Ninefingers, what his trajectory is going to be in book number three. He's been my favorite character aside from Glotka so far. I would say Major West and his plot line with the Northmen is my next favorite, and I have my theories about Baez. So if you want to know any of those, go ahead and check out the live show. Okay. Then this next book came out of nowhere. So like I said, I basically took a break from reading for like a whole week. I was just too sick, didn't want to read. And I picked up this next book. I don't know what came over me. It was just like, you know what? I couldn't get back in the zone for contemporary romance. I had read two pretty dark romances like right before this. One was a little bit more taboo than I had initially bargained for. And so I wasn't really feeling it. I had read Lorraine Heath, and I was like, I want to try another author again and give this author a second chance. So that is when I picked up Again the Magic, written by Lisa Kleypas. If I could turn back time and make Again the Magic my very, very first Lisa Kleypas read, that's what I would have done, because I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. This has become one of my favorite romances. This has become one of like the swooniest, best romances that I've read this year. This reinvigorated my faith in Lisa Kleypas and what has set me up for basically the rest of the month and what has now been the beginning of the month of May. So this is like a standalone, but also a prequel novel to the Wallflowers series. So that's why I decided to go with this one and not jump straight into the Wallflowers. Although I have heard you can do that, but if you know anything about me, I tend to like to follow the rules and go in order. So this follows Lady Aline, right? Yep, Lady Aline Marsden and McKenna. And once again, I will be posting this video. I don't know when, but I'll be posting it soon. It is my favorite romance trope. Childhood best friends to lovers. Lady Aline and McKenna, childhood best friends to lovers. Oh my gosh. All right, so it takes place, a majority of this book, actually all of this book, takes place on the estate, Stony Cross Park. Lady Aline is the oldest daughter of the Earl of the estate, and McKenna is an orphan boy who grows up on the estate as their stable boy. And that's another trope that I really love too. And I like it from my fantasy books, kind of in the format of like Princess and Her Guard. So if you have any other recommendations that kind of follow along these like class differences of like lady and stable boy or Princess and Her Guard kind of situation where they grow up together, oh, I go really hard on this trope in that video. So it has all of those things. Now, Lady Aline is found out, like her feelings for McKenna have grown from just like casual childhood friends into something more. And as the eldest daughter of the Earl, that's not good. We can't have that. It's not allowed. It's not proper. And so her father does end up finding this out, and she is heartbroken, and he says, McKenna's got to go. So Lady Aline is like, well, I want you to set him up right. I don't want him to want for anything. I will go along with this charade of yours if you set him up. Otherwise, I'm going to run away with him tonight. You know, just kind of one of those like really defiant kind of moments. So that's what her father agrees to. But the way in which Aline sends McKenna away, she decides she has to break his heart and break it good. Otherwise, he's always going to want to come back to Stony Cross Park and be with her. You know, one of those forbidden loves. Now, as adults, he comes back to the estate as a new man. He went away to America and made something of himself, and he's no longer an orphan servant boy, right? So he comes back for revenge. He doesn't come back to try and win her heart. She broke his heart, remember? And so he's coming back for revenge. This is their reconnection love story. This should have been my very, very first Lisa Kleypas read. If you are someone who is interested in reading Lisa Kleypas, I'm going to recommend this one time and time and time and time again. Okay? 5 out of 5 stars. All right. After I finished Lisa Kleypas, I was kind of getting back in the swing of reading multiple books at the same time. So I picked up a book physically, and then I also decided to pick up a book on audio, but I wasn't really finding anything on audio that was like really sticking out to me. So I ended up rereading one of my favorite books from last year on audio, which is Know My Name, written by Chanel Miller. It is her memoir. It is the story of, pardon my French, fuckface, aka Brock Turner, the Stanford rapist. And she was his victim, and this is her story. It's a story of triumph. It's a story of trauma and overcoming odds. And it's all true. It's all true. And I loved it so much, even the second time around, because there are just so many important beats to the story. And I think one of the things that I forgot to mention when I first talked about this book, I talked about it in my 2022 wrap-up video, was that Chanel Miller used to compete in college in slam poetry competitions. And she is also like a writer, a daughter of a writer. She's a very creative person. She talks about some of these things that she does to overcome or she talks about some of the art therapy that she did while she was going through her trial. She utilizes like her powerful voice and like her talent with slam poetry. And so it makes the narrative really, really interesting, easy to follow, and really, really powerful. This is such a powerful book. So I still gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Still. All right. And then my final 3 of the month were all historical romance. We were in the historical romance swing of things, and I kicked it off again, came back to Lorraine Heath, The Lost Lords of Pembroke trilogy. This is book number 2. This is Tristan's story. This is Lord of Temptation. So once again, if you did not watch part 1, which I still recommend you do, this follows 3 brothers that were sons of a duke, and their father went on a horseback ride one day with their uncle, and he fell from his horse and died. Very mysterious, very dubious circumstances. And their theory was that their uncle killed him. And their uncle wants the dukedom for himself, decides that he's going to capture these boys while they're still young, lock them away in a tower, and then he's going to kill them and dispose of them so that way he can take over the land and the titles himself. Our heroine, Mary, is their best friend from childhood. She ends up setting them free, letting them escape, and they decided if they're going to try and come back and claim what is theirs and take the dukedom back for themselves, then they have to split up and they have to spend some time away from London so that they can grow up and take on their uncle as adults, because they were 14 and 11 when they were young and when this plot to murder them took place. So all of that we cover in book number 1. So book number 2 is Lord Tristan's story, and Tristan is the second eldest brother. And when he was sent away, he was sold by his brother into the custody of a ship captain. And it wasn't an easy decision for the twins and the brothers to split up. And so him as a young man, he's having to reconcile with a lot of things at sea. When they've come back into London society, he hates so much of it, but he is like the charming, charismatic brother, and I really, really loved him. And he's basically just like playing a role. Because he knows he has to make allies and things like in society now that they're back playing those political society games. but his heart is really at sea. Now, there's a young woman who comes across his path. Her name is Anne. She is our heroine. She is the daughter of a very powerful man, and she's got some older brothers. They're basically trying to secure her a good match for marriage, so that way, you know, she can be set up. But the fact of the matter is that she is mourning the loss of her previous fiance, and her father and her brothers don't like the way that she's going about things, and they're trying to rush her through the process, and she wants to do things on her own terms. So she wants to take a ship and sail off to this far off place that's going to help her resolve some of her issues, and so she hires Tristan, Captain Jack is what they call him at sea. So she has no idea who he is. She has no idea who he is. But she hires him, and it is their coming together and their connection and their love story. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. This was slow and steamy and really, really good. This was definitely more steamy than book number 1, because book number 1, they kind of did things a little bit more properly than Tristan, a sea captain, would do. And oh, I loved it. And it was like such a refreshing, like, I didn't dislike any of these heroines. She was incredibly strong-willed for a woman at that time who's being controlled by all these men in her life. And she's wanting to do things at her own time in her own way, and she does it, and it's so good. Oh, wonderful addition to that trilogy. So then immediately after I finished that, I had to pick up book number 3 and conclude the trilogy. So this is Lord of Wicked Intentions, written by Lorraine Heath. We finally have come to Rafe's story, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. So Rafe is the youngest brother at the time of their separation. He was 11 when all of this went down. So there was a lot that he didn't understand, and he was also, being the younger brother, he always felt this like separation from the other two because they're twins and they have this connection, and he's not a part of that, and he just wants to be a part of the group. But they end up leaving him at a workhouse, and like his abandonment issues went tenfold after that incident, and he had to stay behind. And there's just a lot of his personality that we kind of see in the first 2 books of like why he's the way that he is. He doesn't really want a connection with his brothers because they left him behind, and he harbors some resentment for that. But he's willing to like come together for them, obviously, so that way they can keep the family name among the rightful heirs. But he really doesn't want to build anything beyond that. He's really built this separate life around himself, and he's become something of a very like powerful person in the London Underground kind of world, because that's where he grew up. He grew up on the streets. He's supposed to be a young lord, but he's growing up on the streets of London and having to work his way up. He ends up becoming like one of those like enforcers for like a gambling boss, and then ends up taking over the gambling hell from him. And so he's running this very like dubious club, and he deals with a lot of shady characters. And he was visiting this man who owed him quite a lot of money. I mean, this man was like highly in debt to the club. And so this man's solution was to offer up his half-sister, Evelyn, to these wealthy men. And he was going to basically sell her to these wealthy men, sell her virginity to these wealthy men, because she is not a proper daughter of his father. She is the bastard daughter of his father. And he's like, listen, she doesn't have any political power anyway, but I bet you somebody's going to pay some real good money for her. So Rafe ends up finding himself at this house on the evening that the brother is trying to like auction off his sister. She has no idea what's going on. Rafe is able to read the room, and he is disgusted by it. So he ends up deciding to make a bid for her and sort out a deal with the brother that like, all right, I'll wipe your debts clean. She's going to become my mistress. So it is them coming together. I still gave this 5 out of 5 stars because it brings like the story of the brothers together, and brings their whole story arc to a conclusion with like the most tormented of them all. And then this young woman who is extremely naive, and she didn't even know that her brother was like planning on selling her virginity off. We have like these two worlds coming together, this like really naive person trying to heal the hurts of this like really jaded person. I'm really sad that that trilogy is over and that I don't have any more of them to read, but I really loved it. I can't wait to continue on with more of her books and see what else she has in store. So then that brings us to my final book of the month of April, and this one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars, but it's still a promising book. So this is Secrets of a Summer Night, written by Lisa Kleypas, the last historical romance novel of the month. And yeah, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. This is book number 1 of the Wallflowers series. So we did the prequel already with Again the Magic, and now we're continuing on with the Wallflowers. So this is a brand new set of young women who are in London society and constantly looked over as eligible brides for the titled people of the day, right? So they all meet at various balls, and they find themselves always being the ones left out. So they decide to form a little pact, kind of like a little sisterhood of the traveling pants, but like sisterhood of the traveling, let's get you married kind of agreement. And they call themselves the Wallflowers. And so this is their coming together and trying to find each other husbands. Our female heroine is Annabelle, and then our male hero is Simon Hunt. And their connections to Stony Cross Park is that Simon Hunt is actually a really good friend of the brother who takes over being the Earl of I think it's Westcliff? Yeah, the Earl of Westcliff. He is now in charge of Stony Cross Park and the lands, and they constantly throw parties. So the Wallflowers try and secure an invitation because they know there are going to be some real eligible bachelors at Stony Cross Park for a big hunting party. And so this is the story of Annabelle and Simon and their romance, and just kind of like us getting to know the Wallflowers, us getting to know about their pact and their sisterhood of just trying to help each other out and help each other find husbands. Annabelle she's an extremely beautiful woman, and she would have not really been a Wallflower had people not really known that she has lost all of her money. She doesn't come with a dowry, so she's not a very highly prized prospect for a lot of the young men of the day, but her goal is like she's really got to marry rich to try and help her family out and try and help them out of this debt situation. Her mother has to do some really, really difficult things to be able to keep them afloat, keep her younger brother at school. Her younger brother doesn't really know anything about their financial situation. So there's a lot on her shoulders. And Simon Hunt is a commoner. He's like a common guy who just happened to come into some money because he broke off from like the family business and started on his own. He's making really smart investments. He's really invested in like the railroads, and he's really invested in like the new and upcoming technologies. He's really got a keen eye for that. But she wants nothing to do with him because like she just like thinks he's brash. She thinks he's stupid. She wants nothing to do with him. And so it's a cute little casual enemies to lovers, but not real enemies kind of situation. And this was really fun and lighthearted. The complete opposite of the Lorraine Heath trilogy where there's like all this seedy activity going on. This was extremely lighthearted and really fun. So I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. Whoo, we did it. Finally, I was able to film my April wrap-ups. Yeah, it was a struggle from the get-go when I first tried this out, because if you didn't watch part number 1, this is actually my second time around trying to film this video, and I ended up having to scrap that footage, and it was a mess. It was a wild mess. That was it. The 6 books that I read for the second half of the month of April, tons of 5 stars and tons of historical romance. So let me know what you thought about these books in the comment section below. What should our emoji be? Let's do like a ship anchor for Lord Tristan, shall we? If you made it this far, put a ship anchor in the comment section below. If you would like to follow me on my social media, I'm on Twitter and Instagram. It's @whatcassread, the same as this channel, so it should be super easy for you to find. And then of course, you know how these videos end. I'll talk to you later.